Well, it's October the 20th, and we're still not in the bottom three, but the context is getting clearer, and I'm not sure I like it. It was Ipswich 0, Everton 2. Welcome to Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. Welcome, everybody. My mood has been immediately lifted by a wonderful super chat from Gary. Value for money for the necessary therapy. Thank you ever so much. Gary, who is watching live on YouTube right now, which we would invite you to do each and every week. No bother if you're an old school audio listener, but you can come and see us. And thank you for Gary for letting me procrastinate for 10 seconds before I asked whatever my pithy first question is going to be. Joe, my barometer for things not being great are when you're 2-0 down at half time at home. So I was at a wedding yesterday, keeping tabs on everything. Just give me a sense of your overall feelings before we drill in, because there's a lot of resignation that this was the true barometer and we really came up short.
I think we came up short. There's no doubt about that. But I think there's been a bit of an overreaction to things. I think that when you look at the sides we're up against in this league, every game is very, very difficult. And if you sort of spoiler alert for the game, if you miss a chance like Jack Clark does early, and if you get a penalty overturned by VAR, which probably shouldn't have been, we're not good enough to overcome those hurdles to win games this season. Everything's got to go our way. We've got to catch all the breaks. It seems like Leicester are catching the breaks at the moment, and they've put a couple of wins together. We're not catching them at the moment, and that's really it. Because on paper, nearly every team in this league is better than us, and that's just the way it's going to be. And I think even if we had a good season this year and stay up, we're still probably going to lose 20 games of football this season, where we've only lost 10 over the last 2 seasons.
And maybe he's made me feel a bit better there, Dave. How are you feeling? How's your overriding mood before we drill into the minutiae?
I think pretty much the same as Joe, really. You know, we're just coming up against these teams, as we've been saying for the last few weeks. They're just better players than we are. Not only, I think, better players. Shearer actually, I think, nailed it perhaps a little bit on Match of the Day, and he used 2 words: experience and streetwise, and that's exactly what they were yesterday, and better as well.
There you go. Welcome, everybody. We've already plugged the live chat, so do get involved in that. Give your views. As ever, we are here to tell the truth and to not sugarcoat it. That is our job. What's that movie? If you can't handle the truth or whatever. Anyway, you know what I'm saying. It's all our
few good men. I think it was.
Thank
you. Want the truth?
Jack Nicholson, wasn't it?
I want to hear more from Joe with that impression. That sounded quite good fun. So the kind of setup yesterday was, we finally get a sort of bottom 6 team. We say bottom 6 in the Premier League. Let's say bottom 5 team at home with the opportunity to beat them in Everton. And it didn't go so well, did it? But let's get into the lineups. We'll go to you, Dave, on the Ipswich team. Muric in goal. Leif Davis, Luke Wolfenden, Dara O'Shea, and the return of Cameron Burgess. So I'd love your thoughts on the back line. Sam Morsey and Calvin Phillips. Wes Burns, Jack Clark, Amari Hutchinson, and Liam Delap. What's your thoughts on the selection?
Yeah, well, obviously there was rumours going around pre-match about Jacob Greaves, and those rumours were well-founded, obviously, because it appears he's got a hamstring injury and he's going to be out. I think I read, till possibly after the next international break. So that's 2 or 3 weeks, perhaps. So, another blow coming on the back of obviously the serious hand injury sustained by Twanzebe. So, look, there's 2 out of your back 4 who had performed. Probably our 2 most consistent defenders so far this season, up to the West Ham game. So that was a blow. O'Shea, obviously, then we understand also that Ben Johnson also perhaps picked up a little injury, was completely out of the squad. And I think we all thought when we saw the squad at the Greyhound, well, Johnson's out of the squad, surely he hasn't been dropped solely on the back of that West Ham performance. So I think from what we understand, there's a slight injury there as well. So, Dara O'Shea shuffled across to right back. In hindsight, I wouldn't say that was a great success, but again, we'll get onto that shortly. But I think the rest of the team was pretty much as per West Ham. I think, wasn't it? Starting 11, the rest of the team, I think it was.
Joe?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, obviously it's a concern when you're losing players to injury, and to, like I say, Axel Tuanzebe had been fantastic. It's sort of a minor error at Southampton, but other than that, and now he seems to be out for the foreseeable future. And Jacob Greaves, who stepped up really well, he not had the greatest, obviously against Aston Villa, a poor clearance, and at West Ham, I thought he had a tough outing there, but he's still a player that's growing into this Premier League role, and it just puts you back. And I'd say, without sort of disrespecting Cameron Burgess too much, I'd say probably from Jacob Greaves to Cameron Burgess is probably the biggest drop-off we've got in the squad from starter to replacement in that regard there. So you wonder what they do next week. Is it Luke Wolfenden and Dara O'Shea at the back? I say it'll be interesting to see what Kieran does next week.
And for Everton, these bore me doing these every week. England's Jordan Pickford in goal. It's Ashley Young, Michael Keane, James Tarkowski. Mikolenko is the left back. Doucouré, Gay, Harrison, McNeil, and Jai. Calvert-Lewin up top, Joe.
Yeah, just for a side that's sort of been struggling for the last few years. I didn't check it, but I think without the points deduction, they'd have finished like 11th last year, maybe without that. And it's just the same team, just with a couple of tweaks to it. And this is a difficulty in the Premier League, that every team you play is a solid core team, and they just add 2 or 3 to each year. Where in the EFL, we're used to sort of big turnovers each year. This time of the season, everyone get back together. But these guys have been playing Sean Dyche ball for that long, and I think the way they defended their lead and got into their shape, worked it around us, just made it very, very difficult to us. But you look at I was talking to someone earlier about the defenders, and we had Luke Wolfenden and Cameron Burgess, but even if we had Jacob Greaves and Dara O'Shea, yeah, they're sort of 12, 15 million pound players we signed. But if you wanted to sign Michael Keane and James Tarkowski, that's probably going to cost you about 80 million to sign those two players, because they are, well, previously been England internationals, Premier League players, hundreds of appearances at that level under their belt. So it just shows, yeah, we've spent over 100 million this summer, but that doesn't really get you a huge amount. It doesn't really get you any Premier League experience or anything like that. So it's just a massive, massive gulf between the two teams still.
Well, Dave, Joe makes a good point. And I look at someone like Iliman and Jai, who was a top championship player, sort of play, like say the Jack Clark of, the season before. But Everton and the established Premier League teams were able to take a player that we can, reasonably compare with Jack Clark and put him with a load of people with 150 Premier League games, right? So Joe's right, isn't he, Dave?
Oh, he is, and a good example there. What a player! What a player he is, by the way. Yeah, no, absolutely right. I think the centre halves are really good. A really good case in point, really. Some people around with perhaps sort of moaning and groaning a bit. Oh, quality of our balls in the box. Yeah, they perhaps weren't, but you've got international centre halves. Joe said 40, 50 million pound centre halves getting in the way and heading them away and knowing where to be and marshalling the back four and stuff. So yeah, it's totally different levels we're looking at week in, week out now.
How did we start, Dave?
Yeah, good, pretty good. Yeah, and carved out such a great chance. And this is the example in both boxes. We're just not at this moment in time ruthless enough, perhaps is the right word, in both boxes. And it's a tried and tested move from League One almost, although perhaps substitute Amari Hutchinson for Connor Chaplin. So that move with the ball inside the fullback, I think it was inside the fullback, for Burns. Great pace. Burns, what he's about for once, got beyond his man. Great pace. Did really well. Sometimes I know last 2 seasons, perhaps been a little bit critical occasionally. And Burns' final ball, not getting his head up, did everything right. And yeah, Clark, he can almost take a touch there and get it out of his feet almost, but goes to hit it first time. I mean, this time of season, surely you can't blame a bobble on the pitch this time of the season and just completely, well, just sliced it high and wide. That was, well, there is another one subsequent to that after they score, but yeah, that was the chance really. Yeah, and you really go in. I think it was 7 minutes, was it 5, 6, 7 minutes, something like that. You put that away, totally different complexion, but you missed that, and yeah, massive chance.
We're taking those chances in a couple of the other home games, haven't we, Joe, with Delap?
Yeah, and it just makes such a difference that we're going to be a moments team, and you need to take these moments when they present themselves to you. And it was a brilliant bit of football. And I know there's been criticism of Amari playing in the 10, Wes Burns playing on the right, but Burich playing out from the back, Phillips getting on the ball. But all of those combined to create that brilliant chance. And Jack Clark has just got to score. I say, like Dave says, there's time to take a touch, and you can take a touch and rifle that home. But to finish it the way he did was inexcusable. Really, it was just a massive error. And momentum and stuff builds, doesn't it? And I say it's just a totally different game if you score that.
And knowing how Jack Clark can finish, at that very end last season for Sunderland, when one of the best away goals I saw all season is so. But as Joe rightly said, these little moments now, you've got to grasp every single one that comes your way, and if you don't, shit happens.
No, you're totally right, Dave. He's got all of he could whip that into the bottom corner of his right foot. He could touch it and probably leave a player on his backside and finish. He could go the other way. Joe, if we're going to be a moments team, would you be an advocate of coming out to that Will Young song where he goes, "I'm going to take this moment"?
I was going to go Martine McCutcheon, I think.
This is my moment. Yeah, okay. Both number ones. Both equally good songs. Joe, I wonder where we'll let Dave decide whether he needs to do a crap for this, because we don't want to have a pop at individual players, because there's been a lot of individual mistakes leading to goals. But it's head in hand stuff again, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They've worked the ball quite nicely out on the right-hand side. And Dwight McNeil, who was excellent yesterday, just getting on the ball, dragging us about. And he puts a ball to the back post. And O'Shea's there. It's not the best header away. I guess it's probably one of those ones you maybe want to put out for a corner behind you, or that. It's not like I said, it's not a good header. He heads it down. But Burns takes it on his chest. And it's that thing you see footballers do 100 times a season. Don't do it. Just chest the ball down and hook it away. And he chests the ball down and he almost sort of freezes and sort of juts out the ball and leaves it, and then he dives in there, takes a touch and rifles it past Aro Muric in the goal. Absolute, really good finish. But as soon as it happens, Wes Burns' head in his hands, and he goes from should have been having a brilliant assist at one end of the pitch to having an assist at the other end of the pitch. And it's a like Clark's miss. This is an inexcusable error, despite what has happened before it with maybe that should have been a better defensive header.
Dave, anything to add on that?
No, only what's O'Shea doing? Look, it is down to Burns. This is totally down to Burns, as Joe quite rightly says. He takes it on your chest, just hook it away, get it away. He tries to turn inside. Why is O'Shea heading that ball from where he is pretty much on the byline? And there's not a lot of perhaps a little bit of pressure from Njai, I think it was. Just play the way you're facing, head it out for a corner. But he tries to keep it alive, and he heads it nowhere really. I think he's got partial. I mean, majority of the blame clearly is with Burns, but I think O'Shea, surely communication there. Just head it out for a corner, get it away for a corner. But tries to be clever, head it back, and he just tries to turn inside with it, and he gets in nicked. And great finish. What a great player that Njai is. I love watching him yesterday. Great finish, and just again another glaring error.
Not good. How do we react to going behind, Dave?
Pretty well. I think we wasn't too much going on, I don't think. And then we come to I'm not sure quite what minute that was, the VAR penalty. Debacle. I don't know what you want to call it, really.
26, Dave. So it was.
So the game
was 9 minutes. 9 minutes.
10 minutes later. So I think the game was fairly. I think when did Calvert-Lewin had a chance? When again.
That was before the goal.
That was before the goal. Phillips.
That was right. That was right after Clark's miss. That was
Calvert-Lewin.
Calvert-Lewin now.
Calvert-Lewin,
Dave.
Calvert-Lewin. I was saying Calvin Phillips. I was going on to say another bad touch. Oh, it was though. It was another bad touch by him. Nicked I think
It's ahead of Wolfie, isn't
Calvert-Lewin
it?
nicked it away from O'Shea, and a good save from Muric. But then comes the penalty, penalty decision, which, yeah, I'm sure we're going to debate a fair bit. Which is given on pitch. But then obviously, then suddenly you see, oh, hang on a minute, wait a minute. Yeah, but this is not going to happen immediately. So clearly there's a VAR decision going on. I learned something. I think the majority of the crowd learned where the VAR camera is, and it's in front. It's in front of the Cobbold stand, isn't it? Which I don't think I certainly didn't know where it was. And then, so yeah, consequently delaying. Well, until today, because I saw an incident today, which did, God's sake, do you know what I mean? He goes over to check it, and yeah, as soon as he's there looking at it, you think, yeah, this he's not going to give it, and sure enough, he comes back with the dreaded, yeah, on you go. So yeah,
but you see, even when they show it to him, they show him the replay like 10, 15 times. Where I know people would have watched the Wolves Man City game today. There's a late goal John Stone scores, and Bernardo Silva is not really in front of the keeper. It's a VAR review. The goalie goes over, looks at it, literally looks at one replay, decides it's not offside, and comes straight back. And like I say, I've got McKenna's comments up here because I think they were quite important as to what it went on. He said, at the time, it looked like a penalty. Of course, I'm saying that from an Ipswich lens, but Jack dribbled past a couple of players, is about to shoot. There's every chance it's goal, and Dwight McNeil lunges across the line of the ball right when he's on his backswing. Of course, you can say then that it's Jack Foot that strikes Dwight McNeil, but Dwight McNeil lunges across the line of the ball in the penalty area, which I don't think you can do as a defender. He hasn't touched the ball. He's not made an attempt to play the ball, and he stopped Jack taking his shot. So I think it's a penalty. I understand how it's one you could possibly debate, but what I can't understand is that from all the directors we've had and everything I've experienced so far, unless it's a clear and obvious error, then it won't be reviewed, and the referee's decision on the field will stand. That's for good reason, because the referee has the best view, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's a really poor decision for that to be identified as a clear and obvious error. I've spoken to Michael downstairs, and we had a respectful conversation. To be honest, he saw it how I saw it. We both agreed Dwight McNeil stepped across the line of the ball as Jack Clark's about to shoot. But he said when you get information fed into your ear, then it's difficult to go against that. I don't think he should have been put into that decision by the VAR. And I think this is the important part of it. And it's disappointing when you see Match of the Day last night and they talk about it, and all they talk about is like, is it a penalty? Is it not a penalty? Oh, okay, it's probably not. That isn't what they said. Oh, McKenna's had a moan about VAR, and this is what it is. But the point McKenna's making isn't, is it a penalty? Is it not a penalty? It's, is there a bad enough call on the pitch that you need to be re-looking at that?
Joe, can I stop you there? I'm under the understanding that clear and obvious is irrelevant when it comes to penalties. That there's so clear and obvious is for subjective calls, and there's the four. If someone can Google this while we're watching, there's the four game-changing things that are always checked by VAR, which is a goal, a penalty, mistaken identity, and something else that I can't remember. So
yeah,
I could be wrong. Let me just finish my thought. Let me just finish my thought, Joe. I could be wrong because I love Kieran McKenna. I'd want him to be right, but I don't think clear and obvious is relevant in this case because a penalty is always checked by VAR in the same way a goal. I'm trying to think what the other one is. A goal.
Yes, yeah, but the difference is.
Sorry. Go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, the directive is that there's supposed to be a high bar to clear for it needed to overrule what's on the pitch. That they're trying to like we saw in the Euros as opposed to the Premier League last season. They're not supposed to be re-refereeing the game in the VAR. So you look at the Jack Clark penalty. Like I say, I think it was a penalty because I can see there. I'm sure some people say it isn't a penalty. But I don't think anyone could say that's an absolute howler of a decision. You've got it wrong. I don't think the bar's high enough on that for that to be intervened with. And that's what McKenna said. And like I say, on Match Day, they talk about it. Is it yes? Is it no? Oh, no, he's already on his way down. He kicks his leg. It's like, well, that's not really the point. The point is, should that have been looked at again?
Okay, so yeah, I'm clear and obvious on what we're saying here, Joe. I think I agree with what you're saying. If it's about the high bar, McKenna shouldn't use the word clear and obvious because that just muddies. Let me finish. Sorry. That just muddies the water because those particular words are used for something else. I take your point. If you're talking about a high bar, should they intervene? But my understanding is they always check penalties. Sorry. Go ahead, and you can come in a second.
And again, sorry, Andrew's just put in the comments. Andrew Galbraith. He just says VAR will be used only for clear and obvious errors or serious missed instance in four match-changing situations, the ones you mentioned, and mistaken identity. And that's from the Premier League website. So that's what's on there. And there's no way anyone can tell me that that's a clear and obvious error. It's a it's a 50-50 call. It's an umpire's call.
No, Joe. It says or. So VAR will be used for clear and obvious errors or serious missed incidents.
Yeah,
and
but it's neither of those, is it?
A penalty is the or. So it'll be a clear and obvious incident or a penalty, direct red card. So it'll always be used in that part. Anyway.
Yeah, but it's not a clear and obvious error, and it's not a serious missed incident, is it? It's neither of those two things.
No, it's a game-changing decision. So VAR will check. My understanding is VAR checks all penalties.
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter whether
it
it's clear
checks
and
them.
obvious or not.
It checks them if they're a clear and obvious error or a serious missed incident. But checking it for what's it checking it for? It's not checking it
to the same way it checks a goal. That's my understanding.
Yeah, but it's not checking it to re-referee. It's not checking it to re-referee it. It's checking it to see, have you made an absolute howler on this? And it wasn't. It's bollocks, basically. And we've been screwed over by VAR for the second time this season, like the Man City game where two identical incidents, one gets looked at, the other one doesn't. And this one, it's just, and that kills us. It kills us and it kills the game.
Do you want to come in, Dave, before
not really.
Me and Joe spent half an hour debating the Premier League word?
Yeah, no, carry on.
Did you think it was the most important thing, rather than the minutiae of what the laws say? Did you think it was a penalty or not? Because I can see why it's.
I had a far better seat. So I had a seat right up in wide block yesterday, quite high. And from where I could see, I had a really good view, quite central. From where I could see it, yeah, and it looks like he drops his shoulder and evades one or two quite good feet from Clark. Shame he didn't do that with a chance, actually. And yeah, he goes down. You think, yeah, he looks like he's been impeded. Perhaps impeded. Is that the word? He was impeded, wasn't he? And it looked the penalty. Looking at it back, I can see both things. Yeah, I can see why it wasn't given. I really can. The only thing is McNeil. Not that it has to. McNeil doesn't make any attempt to play the ball as such, does he? It's almost like an obstruction, which is what McKenna said in his interview. He obstructs Clark in his motion of taking the shot, doesn't he? So yeah, we just got to hope that it evens itself out throughout the season and some go our way.
And just to clarify, Joe, you thought it was a penalty?
I think, okay, I'm just reading off the Premier League website here. For subjective penalty decisions, such as for a foul or for a handball, the referee will confirm the decision and what they've seen, referees call. So the VAR will look to identify through evidence readily available if there was a clear and obvious error. If the evidence is readily available to the VAR from the broadcast footage shows that the referee's on-field call is clearly and obviously wrong, the VAR can recommend the on-field referee goes to the pitchside monitor to review. Now, that's from the Premier League website. Can anyone say that it was clearly and obviously wrong, that decision? I can't, because I think that's some you get given, some you don't on those. And if it wasn't given, you don't go away and look at it and say that's definitely.
Well, it's not clearly and obviously wrong the other way around, then, is it? Yeah.
No.
There we go.
To be fair, someone's just said in the comments there, why didn't you go back and book Clark for diving? I don't think Clark did dive. But to be fair, I think I think Clark was slipping at that stage as well. So that might have been another factor here. But look, move on.
Yeah, it's not binary. It can be a penalty and a dive, and it can be no penalty and not a dive. So there we go. Yeah. It is what it is, and it's the first one that's kind of really sort of seemed to go against us. And like you boys say, hopefully there'll be another one that kind of comes the other way around. But
I think the problem is, as a lower club in the Premier League, it doesn't even itself out over a course of a season. That's just one of those things that people will say. It will not even itself out for us over the season.
Okay. And how did we respond to that setback then, Joe?
Not very well. We just letting another goal sort of quite quickly afterwards, a set piece which probably didn't need to be given. Sort of Murich's there to catch the ball, and Burgess heads it over him for a corner. Like I say, you don't know where the communication breakdown is there. Has he called and Burgess not heard it? Played it safe, we don't know. And corner comes in. It's sort of headed back into the box. Burgess heads it away sort of to the edge of the box, which you'd expect him to do. And McNeil brings the ball down, and Delap sort of watches him. Jack Clark hangs a leg out, and he just turns, brings it down, plays it through to Michael Keane, who absolutely rifles it into the top corner. But I think at this stage, I think after Clark's miss, after the VAR, the atmosphere in our end had sort of been killed, and their end was bouncing from it. And it just really, maybe with a 15-minute delay at the start of the game as well, was not ideal. It was as flat as I've seen it at Portman Road for a long time yesterday.
Dave?
Yeah, do you know what? This goal, I think, Burns' mistake was, you say, a howl. I think this goal for me was just as bad. This was awful. This was terrible. Because it's just the ball falls to. So Burgess gets a good head, I think, on the second ball. I think it's a corner comes in, and I think Tarkowski may win it at the back post. I think Burgess, who was I thought pretty good yesterday, to be fair, and in what he had to do, headed it away to the edge of the box, and Dwight McNeil was just allowed to take the ball down, sort of do a little pirouette, turn inside Delap and Clark, who Joe quite rightly said just dangles out a leg. Then he's allowed to, then it's a bit of class. He's allowed to sort of slip a little disguise ball through. And I've got to say, Michael Keane absolutely laces it in. I don't think you can blame Muric for that because he absolutely hammers it in the postage stamp top corner near post from a real tight angle. So it's a proper striker. To be fair, his brother would be proud of that one. I don't think you can blame really Muric for that one. Very similar goal. Perhaps Davis was slightly further out against Southampton. He scored against Southampton last week. But yeah, a bit of class. I just got a little bit of stick from Paul in the comments there about saying I quite enjoyed watching NJ lately. Well, to answer you, Paul, yeah, I can enjoy watching opposition players, and I did enjoy Dwight McNeil. There's a player there as well, very good. But yeah, we just let him play there. It's so weak on the edge of the box, so weak.
Killed it at halftime, Joe. Buried.
Yeah, well, not buried because we've seen us come back from these before, but it felt like we were really going to struggle to get back into it. It needed some sort of early goal, but they were just very, very disciplined, organised, and just let us have the ball really after that.
As you would expect from the manager, as you would expect, absolutely was expect. The Clark miss was the catalyst for the whole game.
Managed to get any momentum, Joe, into the second half?
Not really. No, it just never really picked up. Maybe the last sort of 20 minutes we had a bit more of a go at them when we changed things up after the substitutions. But by that point, they were just very, very content to sit back, and Tarkowski and Keane won everything. We chucked a load of crosses in, but we didn't. I can't remember a sort of chance coming from one of them. Like Chaplin had one from a corner at the end, but it really was sort of all she wrote in the second half. It was, like I say, there were some promising moments, but it did feel very game state dependent on why. And I'd say as soon as we did get towards their defence, they offered us nothing. Jordan Pickford had a very quiet afternoon in goal. The midfield were run all over really.
Yeah.
When they wanted to. It was just one of those ones where, but in the second half, you didn't really see a huge amount of Harrison, McNeil, or Ndiaye. They all just seemed to settle into their roles, and it was more just shape and discipline as opposed to trying to get on the ball and create anything.
Dave, the subs, Chaplin and Clark came in, Smodics, Taylor and Hurst came in. Could he have done anything different, or was it just throwing in what he could, McKenna?
I think so. I really did. I think, overall yesterday, Burns wasn't great. The assist he should have had aside. Who knows? As Joe quite rightly said, if he gets an assist for that, then maybe what happens subsequent to that, after that doesn't happen. He just didn't look like ever really getting beyond his man at all, Joe, did he? Not really. I thought he was quite poor, really. So yeah, the subs, Phillips, was just never got a grip in midfield. Having said that, nor did Morsey, really. And what I noticed more about, and what I'm noticing more and more game, week in, week out when we play, just the pace that these teams play at, the speed they move the ball in transition and stuff like that. And then you look at us and we're, okay, Everton, as Joe quite rightly said, we're a lot more disciplined. Banks are 4 behind the ball once they went 1 and 2 up. But yeah, we're just a lot more ponderous, let's say, the speed they move the ball is ridiculous, really. And yeah, certainly midfield, they bossed midfield yesterday for sure.
Joe, have you got some positives for me?
I guess it's probably the first game where we have created a little bit more at home, but sorry, not at home, just in recent weeks. It's moved on from there. I looked at something and I think the XG of ours, we're like 1.5 and they're like 1.8, but the difference is our XG on target is like 0.3 and they're like 2.5. So it really was a sort of lack of quality in the position starting from that very first chance, that sort of lack of final quality there. But I think probably the biggest concern is I don't think we didn't play particularly badly. We just couldn't lay a glove on them, and that was a worry. There was like I say, in midfield, Morsey and Phillips. It doesn't look like they had a really good game against Aston Villa, but since then they seem to either be on each other's toes or too far apart. They haven't seemed to have got that flowing like Morsey and Luongo did so well. And I don't know, it's just not quite working at the moment. And you sort of, and again, it's just all these mistakes we keep having. It's just one of those. Is it just the extra physical demands being put on people that they're mentally not able to keep up with that? So we're making the mistakes, because it's not like one person's making a lot. If you think Wes Burns made a big mistake yesterday at West Ham, it's Calvin Phillips making a big mistake, and it's Ben Johnson making a big mistake, and Jacob Greaves making one against Aston Villa, and it's like almost like every single person in the team has now made a big mistake during the game now.
Staring them out like fouls, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a concern in that regard.
It got a little bit better, I suppose, the question when we made the subs. But by that time, I think Everton were so entrenched and tucking in. So you're probably playing against slightly tired players. As Joe just said there, Joe Cook on the chat. Yeah, good to see Harry Clark. Thought Harry Clark came on and did pretty well. The O'Shea experiment for me certainly didn't work at right back. We looked a lot better, for the last 20 odd minutes with Harry Clark in there. So again, if Johnson is injured for next, I wouldn't perhaps be surprised if Harry Clark gets a start next week. But I mean, the ironic thing of it all, on the 79 minutes, George Hurst trots on, and then Liam Delap comes on, and the band is back together. Other than the goalkeeper, the whole band is back together again. So it was just bizarre to see that. But yeah, yesterday was again another. Yeah, sort of slapping the chops, really. Another sort of a realization that, actually, this is going to be harder than we thought it was going to be. But look, you can't legislate for the injuries we've got. It's just awful luck, the Twanzebe thing, and obviously Greaves now as well. We can't carry that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and two big positives, I guess. Luke Wolverton, Ipswich boy, made
lovely.
his 200th appearance for Ipswich Town yesterday, and then Harry Clark, another Ipswich-born lad, made his Premier League debut. So that's two real big boosts for the club, for the town, for the community.
Joe, just quickly on Everton, they've been in our orbit so far this season. Is that not really going to be the case anymore now?
I think their squad does, like, you looked at their bench yesterday, and they had, on their 9 subs, they had 2 goalkeepers on the bench. They had Roman Dixon and another Harrison Armstrong or something like that I'd never heard of. So you think outside their starting 11, they haven't got a huge amount there. And another sub is Seamus Coleman, who must be nearly as old as Ashley Cole in that right back. So I think if they pick up a flurry of injuries, there's a chance they could get dragged down. But if they can keep their sort of main 14, 15 players fit, and you imagine that their players are much more conditioned to going week in, week out in the Premier League, they're probably going to be okay. And I think that is maybe something, when you look at the injuries we're getting, the conditioning and the extra demands we're putting on people is really, really big. And you worry how it sits when we actually start playing more than one game a fortnight.
Yeah, I still think it comes down all that and just the experience of these players. It really is. We are so inexperienced now. We really are at that level. Not just as a club, but individually we are, and it just makes such a difference, I think.
And when you look at that experience, when you look at the league, I was sort of looking at this early stage. Obviously, you've got Nottingham Forest, who are now in their 3rd Premier League season now. Brentford are in their 5th, but even the other teams that have been up and down, like Fulham, Bournemouth, Wolves, they haven't been without a parachute payment for probably a decade now. So probably like Southampton and Leicester have been Premier League teams for 9 out of the last 10 seasons. And we are, like I said, there's Forest, there's us, Forest, and then everyone are just absolute Premier League regulars and have been for sort of like.
Well, and Joe, to that point, Forest and Brentford don't look like they're going to be anywhere near you need one of those to have a bad season, don't you?
Yeah, and this is probably something that's happened because of the sort of poor performance from the 3 promoted clubs last year, that they've set something in play that you've now, like Nottingham Forest have gone up and they're now in their 3rd year, and so they've had 5 windows to build a Premier League squad. And so by having that relegation and the feeble relegations as they were so far behind everyone that it's really, really made a massive job for anyone else coming up now.
Yeah, fair point. God, that was sobering. It was like the good old days, that, wasn't it, eh? Well, look, we'll come back to the Everton game, no doubt, in the questions, but we'll go to the roundup after this message from our friends over at Atwell's.
Blue Monday is proudly brought to you in partnership with our friends at Atwell Solicitors. your ideal legal partner for work on property or business law. Their client care has repeatedly been recognised as outstanding, and they are people-focused with a plain English approach which sets them apart. They have offices in Ipswich, Colchester and London, and to find out more, head to atwells.com.
Well, let's do the roundup in association with our fine friends at Innovation Labs. And honestly, the results have kind of gone for us again, with the big caveat that Nottingham Forest and Crystal Palace play on the Monday Night Football tomorrow. But it does feel like week on week there are fewer and fewer teams below us for the results to go for us. Anyway, guys, if you want to pick out one result from the following and have a little chat about it. It was Spurs 4, West Ham 1. Obviously, West Ham. Well, yeah, you know exactly what I'm thinking about that, don't you? Fulham 1, Aston Villa 3. Two teams that we've drawn against this season. Man United 2, Brentford 1. I guess that must be good news going into a game against Brentford next week. Newcastle 0, Brighton 1. Irrelevant. Southampton 2, Leicester 3. Is both good and very problematic at the same time. Bournemouth 2, Arsenal 0, irrelevant. Wolves 1, Man City 2. God, when they took the lead, I thought this weekend can't get any worse, can it? Jeez. Liverpool 2, Chelsea 1 this afternoon. And a big one, Joe, tomorrow with, frankly, we need to all get our Nottingham Forest scarves out, I think. What do you want to pick out there, Joe?
I guess the obvious one is Southampton, Leicester, isn't it? That's the sort of tough one to take when you look, especially for Southampton fans, 2-0 up at home to Leicester. You look like you're finally getting your first win, and then not only do you get pegged back, you end up losing it really late on.
The same goal that we scored.
Same goal, yeah, that Sam Morsey scored there, and silly red card for Ryan Fraser. They then don't get what would be a penalty for them when a Chukwu is pulled back as he's running to try and get on the ball from the corner, and really pulled back. And I was chatting to a friend who's a Southampton fan.
That was pretty clear and obvious, Joe.
Yeah, and that would be. And there's the sort of things, but they said he wasn't going to get there. It's like, well, yeah, he didn't get there because he was
someone's yanking his shirt
there. But yeah, and you really, I was chatting to a Southampton fan last night, and he's already, and I spoke to him after the game when we played there, and he's already in the just like hate the Premier League. It's just so dull. The same thing happening each week, and they'll probably sack Martin soon. But what's the point? He's been brought in with being told, look, we want you to play this style of football. He's come in, he's led them to promotion in his first season, and now a few games into the league, he's going to get sacked. Where really, what more could he have done with what he's got down there? And I don't know. I seen Graham Potter's down available on the South Coast, so it seems an obvious fit there. But it just seems, I don't know. You sort of, especially for Southampton, they've been chasing to get back there all last season. You get back, and within a couple of weeks, it's just like, this just isn't fun. It's just not enjoyable. And the pressure's just heaped onto the manager, where the manager's probably done what most would consider a good job over the last sort of 15 months, but it's not going to be enough. And we're still in a very, very different place to them. But it is maybe just a glimpse of what could come if things go well for us over the next few years, what the club could become.
Dave, you want to pick anything out there?
Not really. I mean, again, it's what the club could become. You look at the Bournemouth Arsenal result right there. All right, a lot of things perhaps went in Bournemouth's favour there, but what a brilliant result that was. And yeah, as one or two people have said in the comments, Spurs 4, West Ham 1 is quite a worrying one, as we're there in just over 3 weeks time, I think, after the Leicester game. Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, obviously the late Leicester goal was a bit of a blow, because 2-2 would have been a perfect result really for us, wouldn't it? You know, it kept Leicester obviously a bit closer to us. But as you look at the table now, Leicester 2 wins on the spin. They're like what, 4 or 5 points.
2 wins on the spin. Given the speed or lack of they're in at the bottom, it's just that's Leicester sorted for. I'm not joking, Dave. 2 months.
It's right.
I'm not joking.
And
no, you're right.
They probably could and should have lost both games in that as well. And
yeah.
Rather than when you look at how the games played out from where they were, 2 points would have probably been a good return from that, and they get 6, and you just think, like I say, we've not, considering how good we've been over the last 2 seasons, we've not had a huge amount of luck in that. In League One, it takes 98 points to.
I can think of some fan bases who'll clip you out saying that, Joe.
Yeah, but I mean, it takes 98 points for us to pip Sheffield Wednesday to automatic promotion. It takes 96 points for us to pip that, and now it looks like we've come into a Premier League where last year, like 25 points would have been enough to stay up, and we're here, and it's a league where, like I say, 2 of the 3 teams below us, Crystal Palace and Wolves, have got experienced squads, and you'd imagine they're going to pick up at some point. And like I say, we could probably end up, even if we do pick up 35, 36 points, that not being enough. So it is frustrating that we seem to end up in these really high stakes races at high levels compared to sort of usual averages. It feels like we're going to end up in one in this one.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty, is it? If we do stay up, it's not going to be. We're not going to be staying up playing pretty open attacking football like we have the last couple of seasons. So yeah, it's going to be all backs to the mill, and Christ, yeah, grind out results. You're going to have to, aren't you?
It's getting to the point already, Dave, where I'm looking particularly at Palace and Wolves there, and you're almost hoping their owners just do something silly, fire the manager too early, bring in the wrong manager.
Well,
so you're going up against a team that has 3 managers in a season and could just have, that one dreadful season where they drop out and kind of join us down there, if you know what I mean.
You just have to hope they both stay in that, don't you? They both stay in this relegation fight rather than anything else, that they don't just put 3 out of 4 wins in there and just pull out of it.
Looking at that caption there, Brentford, I'm sure. Look, we've seen West Ham. Sorry, West Ham aren't going to be down on the evidence of yesterday and new ownership, possibly Everton. So really, you are, okay, Leicester. You say you're probably sorted, as you said, for a couple of months. But again, we beat Leicester in a couple of weeks, and it's a totally different look about it. So yeah, it's not going to be pretty, guys. Just hang in there for the ride, I think.
That's the spirit, David Hay. David Hay, he was a boxer, wasn't he?
He was a boxer.
David Diamond. Thank you to the wonderful people at Innovation Labs, and also thank you to the wonderful people at One Stop Badges. You can get your discount over at One Stop. Thank you, Joe. Go on, Dave. Do it as well. It's very accurate. He's gone in stages now. Very good. Head over to One Stop Badges. Big thank you to all our sponsors here. Dave's got one. Look, he's keeping it in the bag, keeping it pristine, like an album. ITFC women. Oh, by the way, get your questions in now. We can go back to the Everton game if you really want us to. Get your questions in now, and Dave and Joe will ask. Then you can ask me a question if you want, but I'm sure you'd much rather hear from Dave and Joe. ITFC women defeated by #0-1. This is a rarity, isn't it? In the League Cup. First, there you go. You've put first defeat of the season in the next sentence. Back to league action at home to MK next week. Plenty going on. Dave, there's no rewind this week, is there, for Brentford?
Funnily enough, not for Brentford.
For Brentford,
no. The criteria is very much we
Premier League, of course.
A couple of Premier League games. So it would obviously be our very first game against them in the Premier League. No, not next week.
So Mikey and I will be back with the Premier League predictions. Spoiler alert, Mikey will be predicting an Ipswich win at Brentford, which I look forward to and sincerely hope happens, and he is right. Friday for the pre-match, I think, this week, not Thursday, says Rich. So we'll be live on Friday. And the 3 of us will hopefully, in much happier circumstances, be back once again to chop it up on Sunday night. Right, get your questions in then, guys. Let's have a good little debate here. What do we got? Actually, let me go to the starred ones. Norman, Joe. The 3 behind Delap seem to lack physicality. We're also being overrun in midfield. Is there an argument for Taylor to play number 10? He has looked good when he has come on. Get some legs on the pitch, Joe.
No, it's my answer at the moment. I think we've been speaking about this in the chat quite a bit this week, and I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of how our team sets up, that we do have a right-sided 10 and a left-sided 10. And I think Kieran McKenna likes to play a left-footed player on the right-sided 10. So it's Murray Hudson, Connor Chaplin, and a right-footed player on the left-sided 10. So you've got Jack Clark, Sammy Smodics, and Nathan Broadhead players there. So when you look at how Amari Hudson plays, he drifts right to pick up the ball up to then play infield from there, and the same on the left-hand side. So it's slightly asymmetrical, but it's not that Amari Hudson is the 10 and Jack Clark is the left winger, because he doesn't really spend any time out on the left wing. So it's not really a role that lends itself to a player like that. If we were to change, there would need to be a total revert of the formation. We'd probably need to leave Davis play as a more orthodox left back there. We'd probably need to go sort of a 6 and 2 8s in midfield or something along those lines. But I don't really see us changing from the setup that we've got. And we know who's going to be playing roughly in the positions that they're in. On the right-hand side, it's going to be Wes Burns or Che or Bene. It's going to be Amari Hudson or Connor Chaplin next to them. It's going to be Jack Clark, Sam Smolletts, maybe Nathan Broadhead next to them. So I don't see that these big personnel changes are going to make any real difference or even happen.
Can I just say something? Clark's an interesting one, Ben, because I saw some comments earlier, I think, from a Sunderland fan who said that, Clark was most effective for Sunderland when the old cliche, when he had chalk on his boots, so playing very, very wide.
They would switch the play and let him go, yeah.
He was always cutting inside, though, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but perhaps starting from a much wider position.
No, I would concur with that. Eric, Brentford next. Worried. Eric, I'll point you to last week's show where we went over all of our predictions from all of the Blue Monday team. And yes, as a team, we were worried about going to Brentford, but hopefully we will be misguided in our worry. Dave, do you think McKenna knows his best team now, as he's now tried 26 players in the last 8 games? Is this the kind of idea that you have? Right, if everyone's fit, does that idea even exist anymore? You have your 11 that you're going to go. Anyway, answer that how you see fit.
He's talking about obviously starting. I assume he's talking about the starters and not the finishes. Well, yes, Ben, in answer to that, I think he probably does, but obviously at this moment in time, he can't field them due to the injuries certainly to Twanzebe, the long-standing injury to Twanzebe and Greaves as well. So I think in certain matches, I think there'll be horses for courses, but I think generally, I think I think he knows he has a preferred starting 11 when he can put it out. It's just at the moment it's just fluid, isn't it? It really is.
And I think the 26 players is a little bit false, because Christian Walton's played a game.
Yeah.
George Edmondson came on for 1 minute away at Man City to be given a Premier League debut. Ali Al-Hamdi's played when George Hurst wasn't fit. Marcus Hahn has played a couple of games before we signed Sammy Smolletts or before we signed Jack Clark.
Great
and
point.
So there's a few, like Cameron Burgess wouldn't have played had Jacob Greaves not been fit. So we signed 12 players this summer, and they took until the end of August for them to come in. So that there is going to be an overlap. But really, McKenna likes a big squad, and we'll probably use 20 players regularly over the rest of the season. But I think 26 is just a sort of stat rather than anything
isn't it? Yeah,
that means anything.
I think you're right.
I'll take this one if you don't mind. Do you think the goalkeepers who are good at playing out from the back have lost the art of the long ball? No, because I think the next innovation, and this one thing Kieran McKenna has been very, very good at, is he does get in front of this stuff. So obviously, as soon as people start, building from the back, which has happened in the last, 5-10 years, someone will tell me when exactly it sort of, became widespread rather than just certain very good teams doing it. You do now see the variation of the really good goalkeepers who can ping it long and play out from the back and control the ball and be comfortable with it whilst being pressed by 3 forwards at a time sometimes, and having all their centre backs, fullbacks pressed at the same time. I think Kieran McKenna will be in front of that, and they'll be rehearsing in some patterns of play where, okay, if they all come on and press, this one goes here, this one goes there. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But I did also hear an interesting, I'll talk to Dave about the interest, because it's a business quote off air about processes versus outcomes. And I know a lot of people feel fairly strongly about the process and the outcome at the moment. And the sign of insanity, but you know what I mean. Who am I going to next? Is it Joe or Dave? Who answered the last one?
Dave.
Dave. Right, we're going to Joe. Do we appoint an experienced ex-Premier League coach to give Kieran both a sounding board and support? You would think he would have sounding boards that weren't at the club, but sometimes that does help, doesn't it?
If he
staff
wants
at a
one,
certain time.
yeah. If he wants one, we'll do it, and if he doesn't feel he needs one, we won't. This is the Kieran McKenna show in town, so I don't really see we're not going to do anything above his head or over his head or without his input. So it's just whether he wants it. But I think he's had enough time in the Premier League as a coach at Manchester United, so it's not like he's new to the league.
Dave, Andrew, are there players so far who we signed in the summer who have outright underperformed? And Dave, I've got to add in the caveat of this is a newly promoted team that had to sign a load of new players, and the covalent bonds have been mentioned a lot. So if you are saying players have underperformed, that's certainly with a lot of mitigating factors alongside.
Yeah, I think that's such a tough question at this such an early stage. I really do. I mean, look, you could say, do we at this moment in time? Okay, he's not our player, but do we expect more from Calvin effing Phillips? Answer: yes, we probably do. We saw signs of it against Villa, but perhaps overall, maybe he's been the biggest disappointment. But then, you look at in recent months, see he's barely played any football, at all. Frozen out, well, certainly frozen out at Man City. Really, pretty much frozen out of West Ham as well last season. As barely. Hardly any football under his belt for the past season probably. I think it's just so early to tell. Maybe do we expect more from the goalkeeper? Perhaps. I think. Did we perhaps expect him to be a bit more assured with his feet? Yes, probably. Considering we obviously let Hladky go. Hladky went, who was very good with his feet, but I would argue certainly not as commanding overall shot stopper perhaps as Muric has been. So yeah, I think the real answer to that, yes, in a couple of instances, but I think it's far too early to say who's underperformed just yet.
Yeah, and I think the problem we've got is with Calvin Phillips really that you sign Jacob Greaves, he's a guy coming up from Hull who's never played in the Premier League. You sign Darragh O'Shea, he's played a bit there. But realistically, Calvin Phillips is a guy you've just got to be able to hang your hat on every week, and had a really, really good game against Villa and then a poor game at West Ham. And I think it's one of those ones you just write off. That was him just going back to his old club. And he had a torrid time there and he had a torrid game. And then I thought he was really just sort of average yesterday. Like he gave the ball away, which really should have led to a goal right at the very start of the game, like it did against West Ham. And then he never really seemed to get his mojo back, and him and Morsey seemed to not have that relationship that him and Luongo had. So, but like he's a guy that we've just got to find a way to be able to hang our hat on him, and it's really, really important that he plays like he did against Aston Villa and improves from there and plays like that week in, week out, because he's got to be a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week. And because if he's not, I'm not saying we don't have a hope, but we're not going to get in on top of any of these midfield battles if our guys on 150 grand a week playing for Man City on loan here isn't able to be our best midfielder by a distance.
It's difficult, isn't it, Joe? Because I think it's a reasonable question that Andrew's asking, but it is a team sport, isn't it? And if I flip the question and say who's overperforming, I'd be interested to know what the answers are. And you'd probably be looking at people like
Liam Delap.
Yeah, Liam Delap, is a good answer. Yeah, and you'd be looking at like centre backs where they're doing a lot of defending because of like you were saying, Joe, the game state bias. So it's a tricky one, but it's a good debate and it's a reasonable question, isn't it? Let's do a couple more, guys. I think it's your question, Joe, isn't it? Should K-Mac do substitutions earlier in games?
It does feel like they are a lot later than they have been in recent weeks. And I think especially when you look at the Smodics and Jack Clark, they seem to be players that, whilst they have different skill sets, seem to be of a similar level. So you'd expect that to be more in the sort of 60-30, 65-25 range. But it seems that in recent games, it's been a lot later. Like Chaplin was earlier yesterday, but in previous games, it's sort of, he obviously sees Amari Hutchinson as a good level above Connor Chaplin. So he leaves Hutchinson on for as long as he can. But it seems that, we're not, I guess the problem is Delap's really good, Hutchinson's really good. And it's only really, should he take Jack Clark or Wes Burns off a bit earlier? And I guess, is that going to make huge differences? I don't know.
I'm going to put this one up because it's interesting. And I've had this thought, and you think about Ipswich Town a lot. Andrew, is this what being a newly promoted in the Premier League is supposed to feel like? Remember as well, and I say this every week, nobody in the really stupid era of cliff edges in English football has gone back to back and been in League One 2 seasons before they were in the Premier League. So we're not only a newly promoted Premier League team, we're unique in that regard as well. Is it reasonable to think we yo-yo a few seasons before we're a force? Dave, you must have had these thoughts of, well, you start going, okay, say we get relegated, what financial position are we in? Are we then in that lovely position that these teams we've gone up against for years in the Championship? We've got Premier League players in the squad, they've got parachute payments, and you bounce. And as Joe mentioned, Fulham and teams that, get into that, either a parachute payment or a Premier League TV payment. And Fulham's wage bill was £90 million when they got promoted. They were in the Championship with with Mitrovic and Wilson and, players like that. I don't want to I want to stay up this season and build, but have you started to think about the long game, to Andrew's point?
I think you do, more than a passing thought about it. Yeah, of course you do, seeing how things are starting to pan out in recent weeks. But look, we'll be a lot stronger than we've ever been. I mean, right, the Premier League's moved on tenfold in the last 20 odd seasons, but we're going to be in a stronger position than we've ever been. Let's face it, they'll probably, if the worst happens, and no doubt there'll be a couple of players who with high ceilings that probably will be sold, but would be in a really, really strong position. I would have thought. And look at examples. What's a good example here? Perhaps not Brentford as such. Perhaps Bournemouth. Perhaps they've been down and are now up, and now starting to stabilise. Forest are the same. So maybe that is just what it takes. It's always going to be a big ask for us this season to go straight through League One, Championship, and stabilise and survive in the Premier League this season. Was always going to be a struggle. And look, 8 games in, we're still 17th, for God's sake, but yeah, it's tough.
Joe, has that crossed your mind at any point, those thoughts about the long game, the 3-4 year game to stabilise?
Well, it has to, doesn't it? There's no other option, because ultimately we go up and we've probably got a 30-40% chance of staying up at the start of the season, and that may have decreased a bit now, but you've got to have one eye on next season. But I think the thing that's difficult is, as a fan, it's never going to be as good as it was last year, because if we're back in the Championship, everyone's like, it'd be nice to be back in the Championship, hating the Premier League. Yeah, but we're going to be back in the Championship as a team with expectations to get promoted. And if we don't get promoted, it's a major car crash as a club, because you then lose your parachute payment. So it's difficult on that side. But we just have to find a way to stay up. And ultimately, every single fan of Ipswich Town will bite your hand off if at the end of the season, the table looks like it does now with us in 17th place. But a 17th place season is going to look like this. There's going to be periods of 2 months where you don't win a game. You might win 2 in a row and then not win for the next 6 and pick up a little bit here and there. So you're only looking to try and get 1 point per game. Well, we've been getting over 2 points per game for the last 2 seasons. So it's just really, really sort of incumbent on us to realise what a 17th place finish looks like, and not get too sort of down when we lose games and frustrated, and realise that this is still a new squad. It is a new team. They are learning to play with each other. These errors will hopefully be cut out over the next couple of seasons next few weeks. And hopefully we're a stronger team in the second half of the season. And like I say, if we can still be 17th on New Year's Day, you'd hope that it's in a really, really good position. You just don't want to be 6 points off where you need to be at any point in the season, because that's when things are going to get really, really tough. And I don't think we will be. I think we'll pick up enough points to stay in touch, and then hope that we can finish the season like we normally do, go on a good run, pick up some wins and do that. But there's going to be a lot more weeks of this. And like someone's put in there, we used to 3 game weeks. We're getting 3 game months at the moment, aren't we? And it's just
very true.
It's just boring, isn't it, when you don't have a game for so long?
I mean, and there's a caveat to that. Just cutting out these basic defensive errors. We just simply have to.
Yeah, we're going to get relegated if we keep making errors like that. There's no 2 ways about it.
We'll be down. We keep making errors like we have done last 2-3 games. We'll be down by Yeah.
There we go. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dave. Got to say, bit of a tricky one today, guys. It was a disappointing result, wasn't it? In disappointing fashion, with the VAR call going against us, and the league table's disappointing, and the 0 wins is disappointing. But it's our job, like I say, we've got to tell the truth, and we've got to try and be balanced and try and be optimistic and realistic all at the same time. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Get us your feedback here in the comments on YouTube and over on Twitter. And we will be back with the Premier League predictions. And then the preview show is going to be on Friday, not Thursday. And us three, spare us a thought if it still says, oh, look, Joe's bailing out. He's going
again.
He's doing a runner. Well, me and Dave and another member of the Blue Monday team will be here.
You'll find a way when we win 3-0 at Brentford.
He'll be there.
When we win 3-0 at Brentford next Saturday, Joe will find a way.
5G in Norfolk's. I don't think it exists yet, does it?
And on that bombshell, this has been Blue Monday and Ipswich Town podcast. We'll see you next week.